My parents asked, $600K, what did you do with it? I froze. $600K? What? My brother turned pale right in front of me. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. It started on a quiet Sunday evening. We were having dinner at my parents' house. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and the usual awkward talk about work and family. Everything felt normal until my dad put his fork down and stared straight at me. His voice was sharp when he asked, "Lena, what did you do with the $600,000? I blinked, thinking I heard wrong. "What money?" I asked. My mom's hands were trembling. My dad's face went red. "Don't play dumb. The inheritance. Your name was on the transfer. The lawyer said you took it." The room went silent. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Then I looked at my brother, Dane. He was staring down at his plate, face pale as paper. Dane was never quiet. He always had something to say. But that night, he couldn't even look at me. My stomach twisted. "I didn't take anything," I said. "I don't even know what you're talking about." Mom wiped her eyes. "Lena, please don't lie. This isn't you." Dad pushed a folder across the table. Inside were bank statements, emails, and a transfer slip. My name was right there, Lena Wyeth, $600,000 transferred. I felt the blood drain from my face. My name, my signature, but I'd never seen that document before. I looked at Dane again. "You were the one who handled all the inheritance stuff," I said quietly. "Did you see this?" He finally looked up, his eyes wide, mouth dry. "Yeah, but it was your account. The lawyer said so. I just sent it where you told me to." His voice cracked halfway through, and I knew he was lying. I could feel it. My dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. You're not going to sit here and lie to us. Your grandfather trusted you both. How could you do this?" "I didn't." I shouted. My voice broke, but no one seemed to hear me. My parents' faces were filled with disappointment. Dane sat frozen, pretending to be just as shocked as they were. That's when it hit me. He did this. My own brother. The one I used to cover for when he skipped school. The one I helped pay rent for in college. He'd used my trust against me. I couldn't eat another bite. I stood up, shaking. "If you really think I stole from you, then I guess there's nothing left to say." No one stopped me when I grabbed my coat and left. I heard my mom crying as the door closed behind me. Outside, the night air was cold. My hands were shaking, not from the weather, but from betrayal. Somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't just a mistake. It was a setup, and Dane was the only one who knew how to pull it off. Dad's name is Gordon. He's the kind of man who speaks more with silence than words. One look from him could make you feel 10 years old again. Mom, Evelyn, is the opposite. Soft-spoken, careful, always smoothing things over before they turn into storm. And then there's Dane, my brother, the golden one, the favorite. He could crash Dad's car or forget Mom's birthday and still get hugged at the end of it. Growing up, I got used to being the responsible one. I kept my grades up, paid my own way through nursing school, and called home every Sunday. Dane, meanwhile, jumped from one job to another, always chasing something bigger. Yet somehow the family saw him as ambitious, while I was just steady. When Grandpa passed away last year, we all came together for the reading of the will. Grandpa had been a quiet man, but generous. He left behind his farmhouse, a few investments, and savings, worth a total of $600,000. The money was meant to be split equally between me and Dane. I remember sitting beside my brother that day in the lawyer's office. He squeezed my hand and said, "Don't worry, Lena. I'll handle the paperwork. You hate this kind of stuff." And he was right, I did. Numbers and forms made me anxious, and Dane worked in finance. At least, that's what he always said. I didn't question it. He'd dealt with Mom and Dad's taxes before. He'd even helped me refinance my student loans once. I trusted him. Mom seemed relieved when Dane offered to take care of everything. "You've always been good with money," she told him, smiling proudly. Dad nodded, as if this were all perfectly natural. I didn't realize it then, but they never would have let me handle it anyway. To them, Dane knew the world better. A week later, he told me everything was done. "The lawyers got it sorted," he said casually over the phone. "Funds are moving soon. We'll both get what Grandpa wanted." I thanked him and didn't think twice. Looking back, I wish I had. There were no follow-up emails, no updates, just his voice on the other end telling me everything was handled. That's how it always was with him. Smooth, confident, reassuring. Dane could make you believe anything if he said it with enough charm. And I'd spent my whole life believing him. Mom once told me, family means trust, Lena. That's what keeps us strong. I'd built my entire world around that. But sitting alone now, I could see how blind that trust had made me. Every decision I let Dane make, every time I stayed quiet to keep peace, it all led to this. The truth is, our family wasn't as perfect as it looked from the outside. Dad's discipline kept us distant. Mom's softness kept us quiet. And Dane's charm kept us fooled. I just hadn't realized how deep his lies ran until the night they all turned on me. A month passed after that dinner, and the silence between us became a wall. No calls, no texts, just the kind of quiet that feels heavier each day. Then one morning, while sorting through work emails, I saw one from the bank. The subject line read, "Transfer confirmation, $600,000. At first, I thought it was some mistake. But when I opened it, there it was, my name printed as the sole recipient. The date matched the day Dane said the funds were moving. My heart started pounding. I logged into my account right away, but there was nothing there. No deposit, no trace of that money ever touching my balance. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. Why would the bank say I received the transfer if I hadn't seen a single dollar? I checked every account I owned, every old savings folder, even a credit union I hadn't used in years. Nothing. It didn't make sense, unless someone had used my name. I drove straight to my parents' house that evening. Dad opened the door, looking tired, like he hadn't slept much since that dinner. I held out my phone. "Look at this," I said. "It says I got the money, but I didn't. There's been some kind of mix-up." Mom took the phone, scanning the screen with shaky hand. "Lena, please stop," she whispered. "You're only making this worse." "Making what worse?" "I'm showing you proof I never got it." Dad's jaw tightened. "The lawyer confirmed your account. There's no mix-up. The money went where you told them to send it." I turned to Dane, who was leaning against the counter, arms folded, looking too calm. "You handled this," I said. "Did you see this email? Do you know what's going on?" He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "Yeah, that's the transfer confirmation. I sent it to the account you gave me. Don't act like you don't remember." My stomach dropped. "The account I gave you? I never." Mom's voice cut through mine, shaking with anger. "Enough. Stop lying, Lena. We've seen the papers. We know what you did." She started to cry, her whole body trembling. I tried to explain, but it didn't matter. Every word I said just made me sound guiltier. Dad turned away, refusing to look at me. And Dane, he just stood there, silent, watching the whole thing like it was a movie he'd already seen. For a long moment, no one spoke. The sound of Mom's sobs filled the room. I realized nothing I said would change what they believed. To them, the evidence was clear, and I was the thief. I left the house with my phone still in my hand, the email glowing on the screen. Outside, the air was sharp and cold, but it wasn't the weather that made me shake. Someone had stolen my name, my trust, and my family's faith in me, and I already knew who it was. I couldn't live with everyone thinking I was a thief. The silence from my parents had turned cold, like I'd already been sentenced. So I decided to go straight to the source, the lawyer who handled Grandpa's estate. His office sat in a small brick building downtown, the kind of place where the blinds are always half closed and the carpet smells like old coffee. When I told the receptionist my name, she gave me a careful look before disappearing into the back. A few minutes later, Mr. Calden, the attorney, appeared. He was polite but uneasy, like he'd been expecting this visit. We sat down in his office, and I slid my phone across the desk, showing him the transfer email. "I need to understand how this happened," I said, "because I never got that money." He sighed and opened a thick file with my name on the tab. "Ms. Wyeth, everything was processed correctly. The documents were signed and approved under your name. You authorized the transfer." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I didn't sign anything." He turned the papers toward me. My name, written in neat, looping handwriting, appeared at the bottom of every page, signature after signature. For a second, my breath caught. It looked like my writing, but not quite. The way the L curved, the sharp line in the W. My stomach twisted as I realized why it looked familiar. Dane. I could see it clearly now. The slanted strokes, the spacing, it was his handwriting. I'd seen it 1,000 times on birthday cards, grocery lists, even little notes he used to leave for Mom. It was all him. Mr. Calden frowned when he saw my face. "Is there a problem?" I could barely speak. "This isn't mine," I whispered. "These are forged." He studied me for a moment, then quietly made copies of each page. "Take these," he said, sliding them into a folder. "If what you're saying is true, you'll need them." When I stepped outside, the air felt thin. I clutched the folder to my chest, as if it could stop my heart from pounding. The sun was low, the sky turning orange, but I barely noticed. Every piece of paper in that file was a lie written in my name. By the time I reached my car, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely fit the key into the ignition. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the lawyers building through the windshield. The betrayal had weight now, proof on paper, ink on lines that weren't mine. That night, I drove to Dane's apartment. He lived in one of those modern complexes with glass balconies and stainless steel everything. Far too nice for someone who'd claimed to be tight on money. I stood at his door for a full minute before knocking. My pulse was in my throat. When he opened the door, his smile faded the instant he saw me holding that folder. "We need to talk," I said. My voice was steady, but inside, everything was shaking. Dane leaned against the doorframe, calm as ever, like I'd just shown up for coffee instead of holding proof of what he'd done. His apartment smelled like expensive cologne and fresh paint. Everything inside looked new. The leather couch, the polished shelves, even the wine glasses lined up perfectly on the counter. I walked in without asking. "You forged my signature," I said, setting the folder on his table. "Every page. It's all your handwriting." He didn't even look at the papers. Instead, he laughed, a short, dry sound. "You're really going with that story?" "It's not a story. I went to the lawyer. I saw the documents." Dane crossed his arms, pretending to think. "Lena, you've been stressed lately. You probably signed something and forgot. You do that sometimes." My jaw tightened. I didn't forget $600,000. He smiled like he pitied me. "You've always been dramatic. You hated that I handled Grandpa's estate, and now you're trying to twist it because you can't stand that Mom and Dad trust me more." The words hit harder than I expected. He knew exactly where to aim. "You lied to them," I said. "You used my name." He shrugged, almost amused. "You really think they'll believe that? You've already been acting strange. They think you're losing it. Maybe you should take some time off work, get help." Something in me snapped. "Stop gaslighting me, Dane." He tilted his head. Big word for a nurse. Then he laughed again, like it was all some joke. I looked around the apartment. A new watch gleamed on his wrist, the kind that cost more than my car. On the balcony, through the glass, I spotted a silver sports car parked below. The same model he used to talk about but said he'd never afford. I turned back to him. "That's where it went," I said quietly. "All of it. The car, the furniture, the watch." He followed my gaze, his smirk faltering for the first time. "Don't start making up stories, Lena. It's embarrassing." "You know what's embarrassing?" I said. "Stealing from your own sister and watching her beg our parents to believe her." He stepped closer, his voice dropping low. "If you keep pushing this, you'll lose them completely. They'll choose me every time." And he was right. I saw it already. The way Mom wouldn't meet my eyes, how Dad stopped answering my calls. Dane had turned them against me piece by piece. And now he was standing there, calm and confident, like he'd already won. I picked up the folder and walked to the door. My hands were steady now, not shaking like before. As I left, Dane called after me. "You can't prove anything." I didn't answer. His laughter followed me down the hall, echoing like it always did when he thought he was untouchable. But this time, it didn't scare me. I knew exactly who he was. And for the first time, I knew what I had to do. I spent the next few nights unable to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dane's smirk and heard his voice twisting the truth. The folder from the lawyer sat on my kitchen table, staring at me like a challenge. If I wanted to prove what he'd done, I needed more than forged papers. I needed a trail he couldn't talk his way out of. I started with the bank that handled the inheritance transfer. The woman at the customer desk looked young, probably in her 20s, and her smile faltered when I told her why I was there. "You'll need to speak to someone in account management," she said softly, leading me to a small office behind the glass wall. A man named Mr. Rhodes sat across from me. His suit was neat, but his eyes were kind, the kind of person who'd seen too many people cry in that chair. I explained that my family believed I'd stolen inheritance money, that I'd never received a cent, and that the transfer appeared under my name. He listened without interrupting, then asked for my ID. After a few minutes of typing, his face changed. He leaned closer to the screen, frowned, then looked back at me. "This is unusual," he said carefully. "There was a temporary account opened under your name about a month ago. The funds from the estate were transferred there, then immediately moved again to a different account." "Whose account?" I asked, though my voice was barely a whisper. He hesitated, eyes flicking toward the door. "I'm not supposed to share client information, but the recipient account matches one tied to someone named Dane Wyeth." My stomach turned cold. "You're sure?" He nodded. "Positive. Same address, same ID number prefix." The activity was fast. Everything gone within 24 hours. I sat back in the chair, feeling lightheaded. "So he opened an account pretending to be me?" "Yes," he said gently. "He used your details, but the handwriting and contact number are different. Whoever did this knew what they were doing." He printed out a few pages, sliding them across the desk. "You didn't get this from me," he said quietly. I took the papers with shaking hand. The printouts showed every transaction, deposit, withdrawal, and final transfer into Dane's account. Seeing it in black and white made it real. All the denials, the fake concern, the way he'd called me paranoid, it was all part of a plan. As I walked out of the bank, the air outside felt heavier than before. The sunlight looked harsh, almost cruel. People were laughing on the street, living normal lives, while mine was tangled in lies. Back in my car, I spread the papers on the passenger seat. My name was everywhere, but none of it was me. It was his theft, his handwriting, his greed, just wearing my identity. For the first time, I wasn't just angry. I was focused. I had the truth in my hands now, and I wasn't going to waste it. What I did next would decide everything: his fate, my family's trust, and maybe even the person I'd become after this. I drove straight to my parents' house that evening, the papers from the bank tucked tightly in my bag. My hands wouldn't stop shaking on the steering wheel. For days I had imagined this moment, me walking in, showing them the truth, watching their faces change when they realized who had really betrayed them. I thought once they saw the evidence, everything would make sense again. Mom opened the door, looking tired and wary. Dad sat in the living room, reading the paper, pretending not to notice me. Dane was already there, sitting comfortably on the couch like he'd been waiting. His eyes met mine, calm and smug. "I need to talk to you," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Both of you." Dad lowered his paper without expression. "If it's about the money again, we've already heard enough." "It's not about what you've heard, it's about what you haven't," I said, pulling the folder from my bag. "The bank confirmed the transfer didn't go to me. Dane opened a temporary account using my name. I have the statements." I spread the pages across the table. The bank logo, the account numbers, the dates, it was all there, black and white. I waited for one of them to react, to see what I saw. Dane leaned forward, picked up a page, and laughed. "You really went this far? You actually forged new papers to back up your lie?" "Lena, this isn't healthy." My pulse quickened. "You know that's not true." He turned to our parents, his tone soft and patient, like he was the only rational one in the room. "She's been spiraling for weeks. She's convinced everyone's out to get her. I think she honestly believes what she's saying." Mom's face went pale. "Lena, is that true? Are you seeing anyone about this?" I stared at her, speechless. "Mom, I'm not sick. I'm telling you the truth." Dad crossed his arms. "Your brother's been nothing but cooperative. You're the one who keeps changing your story." "He's lying," I said, my voice breaking. "Please just call the bank. Ask for Mr. Rhodes. He'll tell you everything." Dane shook his head slowly. "You're digging yourself deeper. You're not well, Lena. Maybe it's stress, maybe guilt, but this isn't the way to fix it." Mom reached for my hand, her eyes full of pity instead of belief. "You've changed, Lena. You used to be kind. Now it feels like you just want to hurt us." That line cut deeper than anything Dane had said. I pulled my hand away, the papers scattering onto the floor. "You think I want to hurt you?" "He's the one who—" My voice cracked before I could finish. Dad stood up. "That's enough. I think you should go home." For a second, I looked at them all, the family I'd trusted, now staring at me like I was a stranger. Dane sat still, expressionless, victorious. I walked out without another word. Outside, the porch light buzzed faintly above me. The cold air burned my throat as tears finally came. Somewhere behind me, I heard the door close, locking me out of the only home I'd ever known. I stopped fighting in public. For everyone at the table, I became small and beaten. I let my voice drop when I answered calls. I accepted pitying looks from relatives and the awkward distance from neighbors. I smiled when they expected me to cry. Inside, I was assembling a case. First, I found counsel. Not the lawyer who handled Grandpa's will, someone who specialized in fraud and civil suits. He listened without interrupting, then laid out options. Forensic handwriting analysis, bank subpoenas, sworn statements, covert recordings were illegal. He warned me about rash moves. He wanted airtight proof, not heat-of-the-moment accusations. That was exactly what I wanted. Next came corroboration. I returned to the branch where the temporary account had been created and asked to speak with anyone who recalled unusual paperwork. The teller I'd met before remembered, a nervous young man who'd handed in forms late one afternoon. She agreed to submit a written recollection. Another employee provided a copy of an ID used to open the account. The photo didn't match mine. Those pages felt small and practical in my hand, but they were building blocks. A handwriting expert examined the documents Mr. Calden had given me. The analyst compared signature strokes, pressure, and pen lifts under magnification. The report arrived on plain letterhead. High probability the marks matched samples from Dane's own writing. Reading it made my pulse steady. For the first time since the accusation, I could breathe without my chest tightening. I hired a private investigator to quietly track financial flows and to document purchases that matched the timeline of the missing funds. Receipts placed an expensive repair at a downtown dealership, a watch purchased at a boutique, a rent deposit on a luxury unit. The investigator's ledger linked those expenditures to transfers from the account that had been routed to Dane. The list was clinical, devoid of drama, exactly what I needed. Then I set a trap for words. I arranged, through a mutual acquaintance, a meeting that I knew he would attend, a networking lunch where he liked to show off. I arrived looking as drained and defeated as I could manage. He greeted me with that same practiced warmth, then settled into monologue mode about how smart he'd been, how opportunities came to those who took them. I recorded the entire conversation, his cadence, his casual admission about handling the estate, the offhand joke about being too clever. Later, my attorney confirmed the recording was admissible because it was made in a two-party consent jurisdiction where I lived. All the while, I played the role required at home. I answered calls in short sentences. I let Mom speak guilt-laden words and let Dad's silence shame me. I smiled when Dane offered a patronizing shoulder. He sowed confidence. I collected proof. Before moving forward, I compiled everything into a single binder: bank printouts, teller statements, the handwriting analysis, investigator notes, purchase receipts, and the recorded conversation. Each page was labeled "sworn to by witnesses" and ready for legal use. This was not revenge born of spectacle. It was methodical exposure. I wanted no theatrics, only facts placed where they couldn't be ignored. When the time came to confront him and my parents with undeniable documentation, the truth would not be a plea, it would be evidence. I would not ask for belief. I would demand it. Thanksgiving came heavy that year. The house smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon, but underneath it all lingered tension thick enough to taste. Mom had insisted I come, trying to pretend nothing had happened. I agreed quietly, knowing the storm was already on its way. My lawyer had told me the timing was set. The subpoenas would be delivered that evening. All I had to do was sit there and wait. The table was dressed the same as always: candles, the old china, the carved wooden turkey centerpiece Grandpa made years ago. Dane sat across from me, pouring wine like he owned the room. He was wearing that same watch, the one I knew he'd bought with my inheritance. His smile was wide, easy, rehearsed. Dinner started with small talk that barely held together. Dad talked about the weather, Mom asked about work, and Dane kept the conversation light, as if he could charm away the cracks in our family. I played along, calm and polite. Every bite of food tasted like cardboard. My heart thudded with every minute that passed. Then came the knock at the door. Mom started to get up, but Dad waved her down. "I'll get it." He disappeared down the hall, and a moment later his voice echoed faintly, confused, then sharp. He came back holding a stack of thick envelopes, one for each of us. The return address bore the name of my attorney. "What's this?" he asked, his brow furrowing. Dane's fork clattered against his plate. Probably another one of Lena's stunts. I didn't answer. I just watched. Dad opened his envelope first, eyes scanning the pages. Mom's hands trembled as she did the same. Dane snatched his and began reading, his confident grin fading line by line. The silence was deafening. Papers rustled. The clock ticked on the mantel. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice low, shaking. "They're subpoenas," he said, "for bank records. Fraud investigation." Dane's chair screeched as he stood. "This is insane. You can't." Mom gasped as her eyes caught a page tucked inside her envelope. Photocopies of signed statements, bank transfers, audio transcription. My lawyer had included everything. She covered her mouth, staring at Dane. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," he shouted. "She's framing me." But Dad was still reading, flipping page after page, his expression hardening with every one. The color drained from his face. "These are your signatures," he said quietly. "Your account numbers. Your purchase history." "Dane, what is this?" Dane's hands trembled. "It's not what it looks like. She tricked me." I stayed silent. There was nothing left to explain. Then Dad looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. "You had all this?" "Yes," I said. "And now so do you." The next knock came from outside, the sound of footsteps on gravel. My lawyer had arranged for notice of account freezes and a formal delivery to Dane's workplace. His phone buzzed on the table. He looked down and went pale. "They suspended me," he whispered. Mom started to cry. Dad pushed back his chair and walked away without another word. Dane sank into his seat, his bravado gone. The candles flickered in the sudden quiet. I folded my napkin, placed it neatly beside my plate, and stood up. For the first time in months, I felt steady. The truth had arrived, and it didn't need my voice to make itself heard. The days after Thanksgiving felt strangely quiet. The air in town seemed lighter, though inside me everything still burned. Dane tried calling for a week straight, leaving messages full of excuses and half apology. I didn't answer. When the official charges were filed, his tone shifted from arrogance to panic. By December, he was standing outside my apartment, pale and desperate, begging me to open the door. I let him in. He looked smaller than I remembered, his confidence gone. "Lena, please," he said. "I can fix this. Just tell your lawyer to stop the case. I'll pay you back. I'll pay Mom and Dad back. We can move on." I studied him in silence. His hands shook, his eyes darted everywhere but mine. "Move on?" I asked quietly. "After everything you did?" He stepped closer. "I made a mistake. I just thought you wouldn't notice. I was drowning, Lena. The debts, the pressure." "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't turn this into something noble. You didn't steal because you were drowning. You stole because you thought you'd never get caught." He exhaled, eyes glassy. "You're my sister. We're family. Families forgive." I shook my head. "You should have thought of that before you stole from me." He sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. For the first time, I saw him not as my brother, but as a man stripped of every mask he'd ever worn. He was sobbing, whispering my name, promising change. I turned away. There was no anger left, only a hollow understanding that something inside our family had shattered for good. Later that night, Mom called. Her voice cracked through the phone, soft and pleading. Please, honey, drop it. He's your brother. Let's keep the family together. I closed my eyes. The family you're talking about doesn't exist anymore, I said. He broke at the moment he signed my name. She cried quietly on the other end. I listened for a while, then hung up. Months passed. The court ruled in my favor. The funds were returned, every cent that had vanished. Dane's accounts were emptied, his job gone, his reputation stained. I didn't feel triumphant. Justice doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it feels like a scar that stops bleeding. I used part of the money to buy a small house on the edge of town, nothing fancy, just enough space for peace. The rest went into savings, untouched. On moving day, I stood on the porch as the sun dipped behind the trees. The air smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. I thought about my parents, still caught between loyalty and shame. I thought about Dane, and how easily love had turned into betrayal. For years, I had believed blood guaranteed trust. But blood can lie, forge, and steal. Truth can't. I locked the door behind me, the evening quiet except for the hum of crickets. In that stillness, one thought settled deep and final. Blood doesn't make you family. Truth does. Do you think I did the right thing by walking away from them, or should I have given my family another chance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.